A horse refused to enter the stable. What hid in the hay made everyone cry. The first time Bella refused to enter the stable, Thomas Reed thought the old mare was simply being difficult. It was 5:38 on a cold autumn morning, the kind of morning when the fields behind Willowbrook Farm were still covered in mist, and the sky had only begun to pale behind the line of oak trees. Rain had fallen through the night, leaving the yard slick with mud and turning the straw outside the stable doors dark and heavy. The air smelled of wet earth, hay, horse sweat, and the faint wood smoke drifting from the farmhouse chimney. Thomas stood in the stable doorway holding Bella's lead rope, tired, cold, and already behind schedule. "Come on, girl," he muttered. "It's just breakfast." Bella did not move. She was a 16-year-old chestnut mare with a white blaze down her face, gentle brown eyes, and a stubborn streak that usually appeared only when someone tried to brush mud from her legs. She belonged to Thomas's daughter, Emily, who had loved her since she was 10 years old and declared, after one riding lesson, that Bella was the only horse in the world who understood people properly. Emily was 24 now, living back at Willowbrook after losing her job in the city and pretending she was not heartbroken about it. Bella had become once again the center of her days. But that morning Emily was still asleep, and Thomas had taken over feeding before checking the lower fence. He tugged the rope gently. Bella planted all four hooves in the mud. Thomas sighed. Really? The stable was warm and dry. Fresh hay had been stacked the evening before in the corner stall because the hayloft roof had started leaking again. Thomas had meant to repair it for weeks, but farms had a way of turning every job into 3 smaller emergencies. So he and Emily had moved several bales down into the empty foaling stall to keep them dry. Bella always liked the stable. She liked routine. She liked breakfast. And yet she stood outside the door, neck arched, ears forward, eyes fixed on the dark interior. Thomas frowned. "Bella?" The mare snorted. Not softly. Not the impatient sound she made when oats were late. This was sharp, tense, warning. She stepped backward. Thomas turned and looked inside the stable. The row of stalls stood quiet in the dim morning light. Dust floated in the air. Rain tapped on the roof. A pitchfork leaned against the wall. The old barn cat, Marmalade, sat on a beam above the tack room, watching with offended dignity. Nothing moved. Thomas clicked his tongue and stepped forward again. Bella jerked back so hard the rope burned through his glove. "Easy," he snapped. The mare tossed her head, then stretched her neck toward the stable and let out a low, distressed whinny. That sound stopped him. Thomas had worked with horses most of his life. He knew the difference between stubbornness and fear. Bella was not being difficult. She was afraid, or trying to warn him. He loosened his grip on the rope and stood still. Bella took one cautious step toward the stable, then stopped again. Her ears locked on the far corner, where the hay bales had been stacked in the empty foaling stall. She lowered her head, sniffed the air, then backed away, trembling. From inside the stable came a faint sound. Thomas held his breath. At first he thought it was the rainwater dripping somewhere through the roof. Then it came again, a small cry, weak, human. Thomas's stomach dropped. "Emily!" he shouted toward the farmhouse. Bella whinnied loudly, pulling at the rope but still refusing to cross the threshold. Thomas tied her quickly to the fence post outside, then grabbed the flashlight from the hook near the door. His boots sounded too loud on the stable floor as he moved toward the foaling stall. The cry came again, from the hay. He swept the flashlight over the bales. They were stacked 3 high along the back wall with loose straw scattered across the floor. One bale had shifted overnight, leaning at an angle. Another looked as if something had disturbed it from behind. Thomas moved closer. "Hello?" he called. "Is someone there?" Silence. Then a tiny voice whispered, "Please." He froze. Emily came running into the stable wearing a coat over pajamas, hair loose around her face. "Dad, what happened?" Thomas lifted a hand without turning. "Stay back." "What is it?" "There's someone in the hay." Emily's eyes widened. Together they began pulling bales away from the wall. The first was heavy with damp. The second scraped across the floor. Loose straw spilled everywhere. Bella whinnied from outside, frantic now, stamping one hoof against the mud. Thomas pulled the third bale aside. Emily gasped. Behind the hay, curled in the narrow gap between the stacked bales and the stable wall, was a little boy. He was maybe 6 years old, thin, filthy, and shaking violently. His clothes were soaked through. Mud covered his trousers and shoes. One sleeve was torn. His lips were pale blue from cold, and in his arms he held a tiny newborn foal wrapped clumsily in an old feed sack. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The boy blinked up at them, terrified. Emily dropped to her knees. "Oh my God!" Thomas crouched carefully. "Hey, son, you're safe. What's your name?" The boy's lower lip trembled. "Jack," he whispered. Emily looked at the bundle in his arms. The foal moved, barely. A tiny dark nose appeared from the feed sack. It was impossibly small, wet, and weak. Its coat still clumped as if it had been born recently. Its legs were folded awkwardly beneath it. It let out a faint, breathy sound. Emily covered her mouth. Thomas's voice changed instantly. "Emily, call an ambulance and call Dr. Harris now." Emily pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "A vet and emergency services?" "Yes, both." Jack clutched the foal tighter. "Don't take her." Emily softened her voice. "We won't hurt her. We're going to help." Bella whinnied again outside. The foal twitched at the sound. Jack looked toward the doorway. "Mama horse?" Thomas and Emily exchanged a glance. "Bella found you," Emily said softly. Jack began to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears rolling through the dirt on his face. "She wouldn't go in," Thomas murmured. Emily looked back at Bella through the open stable door. The old mare stood outside in the gray morning, shaking, eyes fixed on the foaling stall. She had known. Somehow, before either human had noticed, Bella had sensed there was life hidden in the hay. The next few minutes moved fast. Emily called emergency services first. "We found a child hiding in our stable," she said, voice trembling but clear. "He's cold, wet, possibly hypothermic. He has a newborn foal with him. Willowbrook Farm, North Lane. Please hurry." Then she called Dr. Harris, the local veterinarian, who answered on the third ring, sounding half asleep until Emily said the words, "newborn foal hidden in hay." After that, he was fully awake. "Keep the foal warm," he said. "Do not try to feed it anything yet. Is the mare there?" "We don't know who the mother is." "Is there any mare on your property that recently foaled?" "No, Bella isn't pregnant." "Then there may be a mare nearby. Check the fields, but don't leave the child unattended." Thomas wrapped Jack in his own coat while Emily brought clean towels from the tack room. The boy was so cold his teeth chattered uncontrollably. He would not let go of the foal until Emily gently placed a warm towel around both of them, keeping the foal close to his chest. "Jack," Thomas said quietly, "how did you get here?" The boy stared at the straw. "I followed Daisy." "Who's Daisy?" "My horse." Emily's breath caught. "Your horse had a foal?" Jack nodded, then started sobbing harder. Thomas kept his voice steady. "Where is Daisy now?" Jack lifted one shaking hand toward the fields beyond the stable. "Woods," he whispered. She fell. Emily stood so quickly she nearly hit her head on the stall door. Thomas looked at her. "Get boots, rope, blankets. I'll stay with him until the ambulance gets here." "No," Jack cried. "Please, she's stuck." Thomas knelt closer. "Listen to me. We're going to help Daisy, but you need help too." "She had the baby," Jack sobbed. "It was raining. She couldn't get up. I carried the baby." Emily stared at him. He was 6 years old, and he had carried a newborn foal through rain and darkness to their stable. The full story would take hours to uncover, but the pieces were already there. Jack lived with his mother, Sarah Collins, on a small rented property half a mile beyond the woods. Sarah worked nights at a care home. Their old pony mare, Daisy, had been heavily pregnant. though not expected to foal for another 2 weeks. During the storm, the pasture gate must have blown open. Daisy wandered toward the woods, went into labor near a muddy drainage hollow, delivered the foal, then slipped or became trapped. Jack, waking to the storm and noticing Daisy gone from the pasture, had gone looking for her, alone, in the dark. He found Daisy in the foal. The mare could not rise. The foal was cold and weak. Jack tried to pull Daisy, tried to make her stand, tried to call his mother, but his small phone had gotten wet and died. Then, somehow, with the desperate logic of a child who understood only that the baby would die in the rain, he wrapped the newborn foal in a feed sack and carried it toward the nearest farm lights. Willowbrook. He reached the stable before dawn, hid behind the hay, and collapsed from exhaustion and cold. Bella had refused to enter because she knew something was behind the bales. Maybe she smelled the foal. Maybe she heard Jack breathing. Maybe she sensed what humans had missed. Whatever the reason, she had stopped at the stable door and refused to move. An ambulance arrived first, followed almost immediately by Dr. Harris's truck. The paramedics checked Jack while Emily held the foal in warm towels under the veterinarian's instructions. Jack fought them weakly at first, still trying to sit up. "Daisy," he kept saying. "Please help Daisy." Thomas turned to Emily. "Go with Dr. Harris. Take the lower track. I'll bring the tractor if you need it." "I'm going too," Jack insisted. A paramedic named Lucy shook her head gently. "Not yet, sweetheart. You're too cold." Jack cried harder. Emily crouched beside him. "I promise you I'm going to find Daisy. Bella found you, and now we're going to find her." Jack looked toward the old mare outside. Bella had stopped stamping. She stood quietly now, watching everything with deep, worried eyes. "Can Bella go?" Jack whispered. Emily looked at Dr. Harris. The vet hesitated, then nodded. "Keep her back if the mare is distressed, but another horse may help us locate her faster." Bella seemed to understand the decision before anyone said it aloud. When Emily untied her, the mare did not resist. She walked forward to the stable threshold, sniffed toward the foal, and let out a soft, low nicker. The newborn foal lifted its tiny head slightly inside the towel. Jack cried again, but this time with relief. Emily handed the foal carefully to Dr. Harris's assistant, who prepared a warmed crate in the vet truck. Then she led Bella toward the woods. The search was short because Bella already knew where to go. She moved along the muddy fence line across the lower pasture and toward the gap where the storm had damaged the hedgerow. Emily followed with Dr. Harris and his assistant, while Thomas came behind on the small tractor with ropes, boards, and blankets. The rain had stopped, but the ground was soaked. Hoofprints marked the mud, some deep, some sliding. Small footprints, Jack's, crossed and recrossed near them. Emily felt sick seeing them. He had been so small out here, so alone. Bella stopped at the edge of the woods and whinnied. A weak answering sound came from below the slope. They pushed through wet branches and found Daisy in the drainage hollow. The mare lay on her side in mud and leaves, exhausted, soaked, and trembling. She was a small gray pony, older than Emily expected, with a tangled mane and kind eyes dulled by pain. One hind leg was caught awkwardly beneath a fallen branch, and the mud around her body showed where she had struggled through the night. After giving birth, she must have slipped down the hollow and become too weak to rise. She lifted her head when she saw them. Then she called, not loudly, not strongly, but with everything she had left. Bella answered from the top of the slope. Emily burst into tears. Dr. Harris moved quickly. "She's alive. Weak, but alive. We need fluids, warming, and we need to free that leg carefully. Thomas, bring the boards down. Emily, keep Bella back, but let her stay visible." For the next hour, the woods became a rescue site. Dr. Harris sedated Daisy lightly enough to reduce panic, but not endanger her further. Thomas used the tractor and ropes to shift the fallen branch. Emily held Bella's lead while talking softly to Daisy, though her own voice kept breaking. The vet assistant monitored the foal in the truck and called updates every few minutes. "He's breathing stronger." He's trying to suckle the towel. He's warm enough for now. When Daisy's leg was finally freed, they used straps and a sling attached to the tractor to help her upright. For several terrifying moments, she seemed unable to stand. Her legs trembled, her knees buckled. Emily whispered, "Come on, Daisy, your baby needs you." Bella whinnied. Daisy lifted her head, and somehow, shaking and weak, she stood. Everyone cried then, even Thomas, who turned away and pretended to check the rope knot. By mid-morning, Daisy and the foal were reunited in the warm foaling stall at Willowbrook. Jack, after being treated for hypothermia and exhaustion at the hospital, was allowed to hear the update over the phone before being transferred for observation. Emily held the phone near Daisy's stall. "Listen," she said. The foal was nursing, not perfectly, not strongly, but enough. Daisy stood over her baby, tired head lowered, while Bella watched from the neighboring stall as if she had personally supervised the entire miracle. Jack's voice came tiny through the phone. "She's okay?" Emily swallowed tears. "She's okay, and the baby is okay." "What is it?" "A filly." There was a long pause. Then Jack whispered, "Can her name be Hope?" Emily pressed a hand to her mouth. "Yes," she said. "I think that's perfect." Sarah Collins arrived at Willowbrook that afternoon after rushing home from work to find police and neighbors waiting. She came to the farm straight from the hospital, still in her care home uniform, face white with fear and guilt. She had not known Jack had left the house. She had not known the gate had broken. She had not known Daisy had foaled early. When she saw Daisy and Hope alive in the stall and Bella standing guard beside them, she broke down completely. "I should have been there," she sobbed. Thomas stood beside her, awkward with grief that was not his but familiar enough. "You were working to take care of him." "I should have checked the gate. I should have repaired my hayloft before I had to move bales into the foaling stall," he said quietly. "If Bella hadn't refused to go in, I might not have found Jack so soon." Sarah looked at him. He continued, "There's enough blame for all of us if we go looking, but the boy is alive, the mare is alive, the foal is alive. Start there." Sarah looked into the stall. Bella stretched her neck over the partition and gently sniffed Hope's tiny back. Hope wobbled beneath the touch, then leaned against Daisy. Sarah cried harder. The story spread through the valley by evening. A horse refused to enter the stable. What hid in the hay made everyone cry. A little boy had carried a newborn foal through a storm. An old mare had stood at the door and refused to move until humans found him. A trapped pony was saved from the woods. People brought food, blankets, hay, money for vet bills. Sarah tried to refuse some of it, embarrassed by need and overwhelmed by gratitude. But Emily told her something she had only recently begun learning herself. Let people help you before everything becomes impossible. Sarah looked at her for a long time, then she nodded. Jack recovered quickly in body, though the fear stayed longer. He visited Daisy and Hope every day after school for weeks. At first he moved quietly, as if afraid the animals might disappear if he spoke too loudly. He would sit on an overturned bucket outside the stall while Daisy rested and Hope practiced using her impossibly long legs. Bella always stood nearby. Jack began bringing her apple slices. "You found me," he told her one afternoon. Bella took the apple with great seriousness. Emily watched from the tack room doorway, eyes full. "You think she knows?" Thomas asked beside her. Emily smiled. "She knows enough." Hope grew stronger. At first she was all knees and ears, stumbling over straw and bumping into Daisy's side. Then she began hopping in little bursts around the stall, discovering that legs could be used for joy as well as survival. Bella watched through the bars, occasionally nickering softly. Daisy tolerated this with tired patience. Dr. Harris said Daisy would recover, though she needed rest and careful feeding. Her leg was badly strained, but not broken. Hope had been cold and weak, but had received warmth in time. Jack's decision to carry her had likely saved her life. When Emily told Jack that, he looked down. "I left Daisy," he whispered. Emily knelt beside him. You brought help, but I left her. You were a child in a storm carrying a newborn foal. You did something brave and impossible. Daisy knows you came back for her. Jack looked at the pony. Daisy lowered her head and breathed softly into his hair. He began crying, and Emily held him until the tears passed. The rescue changed Willowbrook Farm. Thomas repaired the hayloft roof the next day, then the lower fence, then 3 gates he had been meaning to fix, soon. Emily teased him at first, but she helped. The farm stopped running on later and started running on now, at least when safety was involved. Sarah's property changed too. Neighbors came together to repair her pasture, build a stronger foaling shelter, and install better latches. The local riding club raised money for Daisy's care. A retired farrier offered free trims for a year. Dr. Harris quietly reduced his bill and pretended not to. Emily changed most of all. Before that morning, she had come home feeling like she had failed. Failed in the city, failed in her career, failed at becoming the person she thought she was supposed to be. She had been embarrassed to be back at Willowbrook, mucking stalls and fixing fences at 24 while her friends posted photos of offices, apartments, and holidays. But the morning Bella refused the stable, Emily remembered something she had forgotten. She knew how to help. She knew animals. She knew fear and cold, and what to do when something fragile needed warmth. She began working part-time with Dr. Harris, first as an assistant, then training toward veterinary nursing. Thomas watched her come alive again and said nothing for a while because fathers sometimes fear naming happiness too soon. But one evening, as Emily fed Bella by the stable door, he said, "Your mother would have been proud of you." Emily went still. Her mother had died when Emily was 18. Bella had been the horse who carried Emily through that grief, day by day, ride by ride, quiet breath by quiet breath. Emily stroked Bella's neck. "I miss her," she said. "I know. I thought coming home meant going backward." Thomas looked at Daisy and Hope in the foaling stall, Jack sitting nearby with a book open on his knees. "Looks to me like you arrived exactly where you were needed." Emily wiped her eyes and leaned against Bella. The old mare closed her eyes as if she had known that all along. Months passed, and Hope became the darling of the valley. Children visited under supervision to see the foal who had been carried through a storm. Jack told the story with increasing confidence, though Sarah and Emily were careful to remind him never to go into dangerous conditions alone again, no matter how much he loved an animal. "If something is wrong," Sarah would say, "you get an adult." Jack always answered, "Unless the adult is asleep, wake them. What if the phone is wet? Go to the nearest house without carrying livestock through a storm." He considered this. "Bella found me anyway." "Yes," Sarah said, smiling through tears. "Bella found you anyway." On Hope's first birthday, Willowbrook Farm held a small gathering. There was cake for humans, carrots for horses, and a sign Emily made that read, "Hope is one." Jack wore his best shirt and stood proudly beside Daisy, who had recovered enough to trot in the pasture again. Hope, now strong and bright-eyed, bucked clumsily in the grass while Bella watched from the fence, older, calmer, and utterly unimpressed by foal nonsense. Thomas raised a cup of tea. "To Bella," he said. Everyone turned toward the old mare. Bella flicked one ear. Thomas continued, voice rough. "For refusing to enter the stable when the rest of us would have walked in blind." Sarah lifted her cup, crying. Emily did too. Jack held up an apple slice. Bella accepted it. Years passed. Jack grew taller. Hope grew into a beautiful gray mare with a white star on her forehead and a gentle temperament that made her perfect for nervous young riders. Daisy lived out her later years in comfort, spoiled by Sarah, Jack, and everyone who knew what she had survived. Bella slowed with age, her muzzle turning white, her joints stiff in winter, but she remained queen of Willowbrook's stable. She never again refused to enter without reason, and every time she paused at a doorway, everyone stopped. That became the rule. If Bella stopped, humans looked. Most of the time it was nothing. A bucket fallen over, a cat asleep in the straw, a loose board. Once a wasp nest hidden near the feed bins. Another time, a lamb from a neighboring farm that had slipped into the tack room and gotten stuck behind a trunk. Emily always said she has standards. Thomas said she has management experience. When Bella died at 28, the whole farm seemed to fall silent. Emily found her lying peacefully in the pasture beneath the old oak tree, with morning light across her chestnut coat. She had been comfortable the night before, eating well, leaning into Emily's hand as always. Age simply came for her in the gentle way everyone had hoped it would. Jack was 13 by then. He came with Sarah and Hope, who was nearly full grown. Thomas stood beside Emily, one hand on his daughter's shoulder. They buried Bella near the stable door, the place where she had stopped and changed all their lives. Jack placed an apple on the grave. Emily placed Bella's old red lead rope. Thomas made a small wooden marker. Bella. She refused until we listened. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then Hope lowered her head and sniffed the fresh earth. Emily began to cry. Jack whispered, "She found me." Sarah put an arm around him. "She found all of us," Emily said. And in a way that was true. Bella had found Jack in the hay. She had found Daisy in the woods. She had found Hope before Hope had a name. She had found Emily at a moment when Emily thought she was lost. She had found Thomas's unfinished repairs, Sarah's hidden struggles, a community's willingness to help, and the simple truth that an animal refusing to move may be carrying more wisdom than a human in a hurry. Years later, Emily became a veterinary nurse known for listening carefully to owners when they said, "My animal is acting strange." She never dismissed that sentence, not once. She knew strange behavior was often the first sign. Pain, fear, hidden danger, illness, grief, birth, death. Animals spoke all of it through posture, breath, refusal, and sound. When young trainees asked why she took small warnings so seriously, she told them about Bella, not dramatically, just honestly. An old mare wouldn't walk into a stable, she would say, because behind the hay was a child holding a newborn foal. If we had forced her forward, we might have missed them. Then she would pause. Never drag an animal past a warning it is trying to give you. Jack, meanwhile, grew into the kind of young man who understood both bravery and caution. He never forgot the storm. He never forgot Daisy on the ground, Hope in his arms, the cold, the fear, the smell of wet hay. But he also never forgot waking in warm straw to Bella's whinny and human voices above him. He learned that saving does not always mean doing everything alone. Sometimes saving means getting help. Sometimes it means letting others carry what is too heavy. Hope became his horse when he was old enough, though everyone joked she had been his from the moment he carried her through the rain. They rode together across the fields near Willowbrook, past the repaired gates, past the woods where Daisy had fallen, past Bella's grave by the stable door. Hope always slowed there. Jack always let her. So before we go, remember this. Sometimes refusal is not stubbornness. Sometimes an animal stops because something hidden needs to be found. Bella would not enter the stable that morning, not because she feared the dark or disliked the rain, but because behind the hay a freezing little boy was holding a newborn foal and waiting for someone to hear him. She could not explain. She could not move the bales. She could not call for help. So she planted her hooves in the mud and refused to take one more step until the humans finally looked. And because they listened, a child was saved, a mother horse was found, a foal named Hope survived, and everyone at Willowbrook learned that the quietest warnings often come from the creatures who notice what we are too busy to see.